Hi, hope you're doing well. Can you believe that it's almost the end of August? It's amazing how time flies, even in this weird and strange time of the coronavirus pandemic and so many things going on in our world. I hope you are doing well today. I want to talk about a parable in the Bible that is really powerful, really meaningful. And it's the story of the lost son or the prodigal son. And the title of the message is Coming Home to the Father. But I want to start with looking at a couple of parables that are also in the same chapter. We're looking at Luke chapter 15 today. Luke 15 opens with the parable of the lost sheep and the parable of the lost coin. These parables are used to illustrate the beauty of finding something that was lost. Let me read these two parables first, starting in verse 1. Now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." Then Jesus told them this parable. Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, "Rejoice with me. I have found my lost sheep." I tell you that in the same way there is more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous persons who do not need to repent. Or suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. Doesn't she light a lamp and sweep the house and search carefully until she finds it? And when she finds it, she calls her friends and neighbors together and says, "Rejoice with me. I have found my lost coin." In the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. Now, I think all of us have lost things in our lives. Maybe some of us have lost more things than others. Perhaps we've lost many things. We've maybe misplaced keys or a wallet or a jacket or whatever. Sometimes we even give up on trying to find it. And of course, people try all kinds of suggestions like, "Where did you last see it?" Well, if I remembered, I probably would go there and find it. Or, "Where did you usually put it?" Maybe it's a familiar place. That's not a bad suggestion. But sometimes those things don't work because it's been put in some random, unusual place or dropped somewhere. We can get frantic in that search for something that's lost. And if you do find it, you feel like celebrating. It's a big win. I imagine that someday down the road, we would move out of the home that we live in, and I'm guessing we'll find all kinds of things that were quote unquote lost at one time. And there they were near us all the time. The point of these stories is that when someone who has not given their heart and life to God, and they do so, it's a cause for celebration. There is rejoicing in heaven, and there should also be rejoicing here on earth. Now, the third parable of this passage in Luke 15 is about something lost and found also. But this time, it is a person. Not a sheep or a coin, but it's a person, a human. Not just a person, but the son of a loving father. In this story, the father cannot just look at his son as though he's a possession, like a coin or a sheep. The son has a mind and a will of his own, and the father has to respect that. So let's read this parable, starting in verse 11. Jesus continued, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all that he had. He set out for a distant country, and there he squandered all of his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him in the fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to the father, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' So they began to celebrate." But the story doesn't end there. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of his servants and asked him, "What's going on?" "Your brother has come," he replied, "and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound." The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, "Look, all these years I've been slaving for you, never disobeyed your orders. You never gave me even a young goat so that I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him." "My son," the father said, "you are always with me. Everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." This parable has many layers of meaning. First of all, a lost person becoming a saved person. Just like the lost sheep being found or saved, the lost coin being found and saved, kept. This is a found person, found by the Father, who represents God in this story, wanting that prodigal, that runaway, that lost son to come to him and to welcome him with open arms. What a beautiful image that is. The Father looking out across the fields and sees him probably as far away as he could possibly see him. That means he was each day, most likely, looking for his son to come home. And there he was, and he ran to greet him. He didn't just sit back in his chair and wait for him to come home and kind of crawl in the door and beg for mercy. He ran to the son. Also, when we look at this story, we see that it could be a message about how the Jews were looking at the Gentiles as rebellious and vile. And the younger son represented those that displeased God with their actions. Could you imagine? This man was so desperate he wanted to eat the pods that were being fed to the pigs. And the Jews, of course, considered the pigs to be unclean animals. And yet, the Father loves him. A message to the Jews of that day to say, yes, God's kingdom is so big. It includes not only the Jews, but all the Gentiles. Anyone who will come to the Father. As with the earlier parables, the younger son is compared to the coin or the sheep, while the older brother is like the sheep that are already safe in the open country or protected in the pens, or a coin that's sitting in its purse or bag in a dish somewhere, safe. The older brother should be like the friends that came to rejoice, the music and dancing led at the Father's call to put on a party. The older brother should be like that. My brother's home. But instead, he was upset, feeling overlooked. We might say, well, he had a right to feel upset. He should have been treated like that because he was the faithful son. But even though he should have been rejoicing in the mercy shown to his brother, he was upset, indignant, and jealous. Look at how that older brother reacted. It's not unlike the Pharisee and the tax collector story that we recently looked at, where the Pharisee prayed to God aloud, saying, I'm so glad I'm not like that tax collector. And yet the tax collector prayed, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. And you would think a righteous person, like a Pharisee, would be thrilled that a tax collector would confess his sin and ask for God's mercy. But instead, it was the tax collector that Jesus pointed out as the one who came humbly in the right attitude before God. Yes, the righteous should rejoice when one pleads for mercy, when anyone comes to know Jesus. And I'd like to think that all of you listening out there today feel that way. When a person comes to Christ, no matter what their experience, what their background is, we celebrate, we are glad, and we join the angels' choir in that. But yes, people are people, and we want to be fair. We want a reward for loyalty. And sometimes we want others to get what we think their actions deserve. But the scripture points out that all of us have sinned and fall way, way short of the glory of God. It's God's mercy that redeems us. Now, one more thought about this story. Maybe it's not the original intention, but what about if we thought of it as perhaps the younger and the older sons as two aspects of ourselves? We, all of us, rebel against God. We all sin. We go our own way. And when we come to God through the mercy of Jesus Christ, we receive forgiveness and we have a home with the Father in this life and the next. But sometimes after that decision, after that commitment of faith, along the way, we might become a little bit more like the older brother. We might look at others and say, how could someone do something so irresponsible? We may be envious of the attention that they get when they seem to come into the fold, into the place of honor, and get celebrated. We might feel, well, where's our party? Where's our celebration? And we forget that the same grace that saved them saves us. It took the same amount of pain for Christ to go to the cross for every single one of us. We are all in equal need of his forgiveness. Ultimately, these parables in Luke 15 point to the one great truth about God. He wants everyone to come home, to be rescued, saved, restored, made whole again. And the Father rejoices along with the angels when anyone does come home. He invites us, like the shepherd, like the woman who lost the coin, like the prodigal son's father. Come, celebrate. What was lost has been found. Do you need to come home to the Father today? If you do it now. Don't run away from the Father, run toward the Father, and the Father will come running to you. He will welcome you with open arms. He will celebrate you, throw a party for you, and we can rejoice with you as well. If this is your heart's desire today to come home to God, just simply pray to God. God, I want to be in right relationship with you. Forgive me for whatever sins I have committed. Receive me with your loving arms. I want to be your child. I want to be restored. I want to be whole and made new again. If you'd like to talk to me about this, I would love to talk to you. Please contact me. Myself or others from our church would be glad to talk with you about what it is to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. Thank you so much, and I hope that all of you have come home to the Father.